Welcome to the Land to Lots podcast, powered by Launch Development Finance Advisors. And now your host, Carter Froelich.
Hello, everybody. This is Carter Froelich, and welcome to the Land to Lots podcast. And today it's my great pleasure to welcome my friend and coach, Dan Sullivan, to the podcast. Dan, along with his life partner and wife and business partner, Bab Smith, is the co-founder of the Strategic Coach Program. And for those of you not familiar, and we're going to have Dan explain the program, but the Strategic Coach is an entrepreneurial coaching program. And over the last 30 years, Dan and his team have coached over 20,000 entrepreneurs to achieve faster growth, greater returns, and an exceptional quality of life. And I, for one, have to thank Dan because I've been the recipient of some of that coaching, and it's really made a huge change in my life and in our business. And every quarter I get to see Dan in Chicago. I started off in the Signature program, went up to the 10X program, and now I'm in the Free Zone. So Dan, welcome to the program. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Carter. And thanks for the kind introduction. And actually it's an interesting today. So this will be next Thursday. I've been coaching entrepreneurs for 50 years. So I started August 15th, and it was I guess it's next Friday, August 15th in 1974. And I think I'm kind of a pioneer in the entrepreneurial coaching business. And I only say that because I think the rest of them are dead.
Well, that's one way to gain more market share, just outlast them, right?
Yeah, that's how you create a monopoly, just to outlive them, Anyway, but yeah, we've kind of created a new form of coaching, and it's based on getting entrepreneurs to think about their thinking.
Yep.
And in order to do that, we've created all sorts of thinking tools, 250 to date, which just take different parts of an entrepreneur's life, and we have sort of structured questions.
Yeah.
Where, for example, who are your best clients? Okay. And then we'll get them to identify them, and then we'll get them to identify the three best clients you have. What do they have in common? What is it that makes them a great client? And with that knowledge, and there's a lot of thinking and other questions about it, and then there's discussions with other entrepreneurs who share their insights. Immediately, there's a doubling or tripling of the clarity that the entrepreneur has, and it takes maybe an hour and a half. And we're creating new ones all the time because entrepreneurs are always encountering new opportunities and new dangers, opportunities, and they're developing new strengths. So we've been doing this, in the formal program. It's 35 years now, but I did it as a one-on-one coach for the 15 years from 74 to 89.
Well, and Dan, you mentioned dangers, opportunities, and strengths, which is DOS. And for our listeners, if you've read our book, Land to Lots, or the new trilogy that's coming out, Fields to Fortune, you'll notice that we reference the Strategic Coach and throughout the book, and Dan Sullivan. And one of the important questions that we always ask our clients is the DOS question, right? Because it's all about them. It's what are their dangers, what are their opportunities, and what are their company strengths, meaning what are the dangers they want to overcome, the opportunities they want to capture, what are the strengths that they can maximize. And I think that's an important concept for our entrepreneurs. And Dan, just a reminder, this goes out to about 5,000 builders, developers, industrial master plan, mixed use. And by definition, you can't be a developer, at least in my belief, without being an entrepreneur, borrowing millions and millions of dollars and getting up and suiting up to jump into the entrepreneurial arena. But yeah. Well, how would that question help our clients? Just the DOS, right? Because that's such a game changer, at least in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, one of the things, I mean, I for the first 15 years that I was coaching, I was just making it up as, as I encountered new entrepreneurs. And I just began to notice that there was some real common ground about entrepreneurs. And it's not understood from the outside of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
The non-entrepreneurial world has a sort of an attitude about what entrepreneurs are. And from their standpoint, it's all about money. These are just people that
Yeah.
money is the most important thing. But what we've noticed is every entrepreneur has a 360-degree world that they live in.
Yep.
And on a daily basis, the emotions attached to that world primarily come in three forms. They have dangers, which scare them,
Mhm.
and dangers is the fear of losing something. That it's just that you could lose, and there's
Mhm.
lots of things you can lose in this world. You can lose money, you can lose opportunity, you can lose capabilities, you can
Reputation. Yeah.
reputation's a big one. You can
Mhm.
lose that. And this is changing according to the world every day. So what the DOS tool does, it brings you up to date every single day. You're just dealing with the things that you should be dealing with just
Yep.
on that day. And we say not more than three because
Yep.
I mean, if you're constantly making progress with the top three dangers every day, you're feeling good about yourself. Okay, and then opportunities, and opportunities are just the
Mhm.
opposite of dangers. Opportunities are the possibility of gain,
Yep.
and that's what the land business is all about,
Yeah.
is gain, and and uh, and there's movement you can make every day if you're clear,
Yeah.
if you're clear about. And then the other thing is the entrepreneurs, certainly the entrepreneurs that you deal with, Carter, have lots of strengths.
Yeah.
They've established themselves, they've made progress, and they have projects that they're working on. And are they bringing to bear every day their top strengths as an entrepreneur, but also their
Yeah.
team and they operate in networks of other people's skills,
Right.
contractors, and everything else. So what it means is that if you operate according to DOS on a daily basis, you're pretty well just
Yeah.
taking care of those things every day, which are the most crucial, uh, the most crucial raw materials you have for making progress that day. And
Right.
you go to bed confident.
Well, and you had mentioned that you do the DOS every day. Yeah, and I started to do that as well. And it's really interesting. And I keep it on a tablet so I can see what yesterday's was and what today is, and how it just literally changes every day. Different dangers, different
Mhm.
opportunities, different things we as an organization want to strengthen, and what a clarifying experience that has
Yeah,
been. Yeah, yeah, and it helps me think about my thinking and what's
yeah.
most important.
And one of the big things in the whole land industry, regardless of what part of it is,
Yeah,
it's changing every day in terms of
yep,
pricing. It's changing every day in terms of availability. It's
yep,
changing every day in terms of regulation. I mean, it's a very regulated, very regulated industry.
right.
Yeah.
Well,
uh,
and the other thing too that I just wanted to mention is, we entrepreneurs have the 1st and the 15th are always important days on the calendar, right? And we in our industry, we're dealing with jurisdictions to get
yeah,
approvals, to get financing, and we can talk about some of the things we're doing to try to bypass the bureaucracies. But when you're dealing with a bureaucratic system that aren't exposing themselves to the market on a daily basis, I mean, it can be really painful. And to your point, they think of the developers as they're just greedy developers and wanting to make money, when in reality, I think the entrepreneurial, the developers that are really, really, truly successful want more than, money is a scorecard, but they
yeah,
want to create different, and to your point, and strategic coach, they want to expand their entrepreneurial freedoms. And
yeah.
maybe you could talk a little bit about what you see the entrepreneurial freedoms being, Dan.
Yeah. Yeah, and here again, it's sort of like DOS. I'm establishing first principles of
Yeah, yeah,
entrepreneurial life. And again, there's a misconception about what motivates entrepreneurs.
yeah.
Okay. And so I've been an entrepreneur, when I started my coaching company in 74, that was my first day as an entrepreneur. So it'll be 50 years next week. And um, and one of I'm a bit of a I haven't studied psychology or anything like that, but I am a bit of a natural psychologist.
Yeah,
But my first patient is actually me,
yeah,
and and I what motivates me,
yeah.
that was basically, and what I do is if I can work it out for myself, I can share my insights with other entrepreneurs, and I'm motivated by freedom.
Yeah.
My whole purpose of being an entrepreneur is to have freedom. And over time, we understood that freedom comes in four categories, and you have to do them in order. And the first one is freedom of time.
Hmm.
Okay. And we look at this both from when you're at work and when you're not at work. What kind of freedom of time do you have?
Hmm.
There's quantity of time, but the big thing is quality of time. That
Yeah.
when you're working on activities that you, as the entrepreneur, it gives
Hmm.
you energy.
Hmm.
Okay, and so if you start expanding, and we do this on the very first day when people join program, is we give them a new time system, and we can talk about that after. But pretty soon, the entrepreneur says, I'm getting a lot out of my days, and
Hmm.
I'm, and the best way to get a lot out of days is have days where you're making money.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
next freedom is freedom of money. Again, it's quantity and quality. I
Hmm.
know people who are making huge quantities of money, but the quality of you
Yeah,
know, they're paying a huge price for the money that they're getting.
right, right.
And that once you get that under, you have a real system and structure for that, then you have freedom of relationship.
Yep.
Again, it's internal to the company, it's external to the company, and then it's in your personal life. Okay. And and you like people that are um, people like people who are like them, actually.
Yeah, yeah. And that's one of the things that I like about the strategic coach, getting together with like-minded individuals that have an abundance mindset, that we all kind of sort of think alike, and that's that entrepreneurial, mindset, and we can talk about mindset. So we have
What would
three,
you
three,
say that if we just take the first three that we've
yeah,
talked about here, you're 10 years into coach
yep,
right now, and I've seen you um, when I was your coach because you
yeah,
had another
yeah.
coach, you think. But what would you say is the time change, the time transformation, if you compare today with 10 years ago?
Yeah, well, and that's something I'd like to really bring up, because when I was first being introduced to the strategic coach, and I'd mentioned prior to our call that Greg Bogle, the founder of Land Advisors organization, had introduced me and said, you got to go meet Dan. And so my first meeting in Chicago, the concept of working less to make more was introduced. And you have to remember,
It's
I'm
a it's a
coming from a
compelling it's
consult.
a compelling offer.
Yeah, that was a compelling offer. I didn't need to be sold on that. I want that, and we can talk about self-managing company and self-multiplying companies. We want those as well. But to me, that was such a huge mind shift, because I was coming from the consulting world, where working 60-hour days or 60-hour weeks is the minimum. Usually it's 60 to 80. And if you weren't hitting that, you were a slough off.
Well, and
And
you were selling time.
selling time. Yep. And so in terms of thinking about our thinking, we had to look at the results we were bringing, the value we were bringing, who we wanted to be a hero to. And the hardest thing I had to do is to start working less, to have, as we talk about the time system and strategic coach, free days, focus days, and buffer days. and to really look at what I am good at, my unique ability, which is creating a future vision, helping our clients achieve that vision, but it's innovating financial products, helping our clients finance infrastructure, reduce costs, mitigate risk, all with the goal of enhancing project profitability. You can tell I've said that a couple times. But as I was saying on our call 2 days ago, Dan, that the strategic coach has completely changed my life. I mean, literally, I am working less. We are expanding. We're developing, and I'd like to say we have a self-managing company, slowly becoming self-multiplying, which are all concepts and rewards of participating in the strategic coach program and sitting down every quarter. And thankfully in the free zone, I get to sit down with you to think about my thinking and unique ability and unique ability teams. So I said a lot there. I'm not sure if there's anything.
Yeah, well, the big thing is that if you're not in control of your time, you're in control of nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, basically, and usually when entrepreneurs are interested in coach and they come, they're already successful.
Yeah.
And they're not successful because of us. They would be successful anyway. They're successful people. But they've sort of they're hitting their head on the ceiling. And the reason is they don't have any more time.
Yep.
And if your basic formula is, in order to get more money, I have to spend more time getting it, you're in a on a dead end one-way street.
Yep.
And you're getting older, and what you could do 5 years ago, you can't do today. 5 years from now, you can't even do what you're doing today.
Yeah.
And I think it's a terrible penalty to pay for an activity, entrepreneurism, that you did to increase your freedom. And you don't have any freedom. So our thing is, at the moment the entrepreneur gets back, and in the very first workshop, they can see how to get 10 hours back a week.
Yeah.
And then we tell them, have some time when you're not working. Use part of your freed up time not to work and go out. I mean, Phoenix, Scottsdale is a great place to have free time.
Yeah.
And the big thing is, then you begin to say, but the time I am using, is it really profitable time?
Yeah.
And that's where we enter into the money realm.
Yeah, because you can be using that time but not being productive. You're doing things that aren't getting you to that next step.
Yeah. And the one thing I'd like to introduce here, and it's a thought that I've got actually a new thinking tool, and it has to do with that entrepreneurs are always the number one salesperson in their company.
Okay, I agree with that.
And I find that entrepreneurs get into real trouble when they forget that they're the number one salesperson. And they say, well, I don't have to sell the way I had sell. I said, you still have to sell. So you have to constantly be changing your focus.
Yeah.
Okay. So in 1994, we created the program in 1989. 5 years later, I was doing 144 full-day workshops. Okay. And that, I have to tell you, that's a bit of work. And we were doing it in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different cities.
Yeah.
Okay. So a lot of air time, a lot of hotel time, and everything. Today, our company is doing 600 full-day workshops, and I'm doing 15.
That's quite a transformation.
Yeah, well, I freed up 129 workshop days, but we've expanded enormously.
Yeah.
Okay. And the reason is that the central concept in strategic coach is unique ability.
Yeah.
That
there's explain that? Yeah.
Yeah, there's something that you do uniquely that nobody else can do.
Yeah.
The way you do it, nobody else can do. And it's what gave you the confidence in the first place to go off on your own. When you move from consulting to having your own company, is because you had a confidence in a certain unique ability that you had that you didn't see anyone else
Yeah.
exhibiting, performing at that level. And we already, I'm in my 35th year of my own program now, and every quarter I said, I shouldn't be doing that anymore.
Yep.
I can find somebody else who can do this better, but they can do it every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm skillful enough that I can do really detailed work. I can do it for 3 hours a day, and
Yeah.
then I can't do it tomorrow, and I can't do it the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So
and
what you're looking for of people who are joyfully motivated to do something very valuable to you every day, and they're very grateful the fact that you gave them an opportunity to do that.
right. And that's bringing together and creating unique ability teams. So in my world, it would be guys that love to model and or create financial models or do legal agreements. And I
Love
have my
love
own.
dealing with bureaucrats.
Yeah, I love dealing with bureaucrats, which I no longer can do. I used to have hair, no longer do I, because of that. But
And the other thing is, even in the bureaucratic world, there are people who aren't no people.
yeah,
They would really, really love to be part of some
yeah.
new development. And there's elected officials who would love to do that too.
Exactly, and that's it's the key to find them and develop that collaborative
Yeah, let
relationship
them
with them.
deal, let them
Yeah,
be the interface between you
yeah.
and the bureaucracy.
And Dan, you mentioned a couple things, and here again, I'm talking a little bit about our call, and I said after 10 years, I finally am playing in my unique ability, and I'm finding it hard to go back, nor do I want to go back to what I used to do. I'm there to assist and grow the teams, but it's completely changed my life. The thing I wanted to talk about and have you explain to our listeners is why is the concept of growing 10x easier than 2x? And for our listeners, Dan and his co-author Ben Hardy have a book on this. It's a strategic coach concept as well. But if you wouldn't mind elaborating on that a little bit, Dan.
Well, first of all, again, I'm dealing with very successful entrepreneurs. I mean, you have to be making $200,000 personally
Yeah,
just to qualify to be in the program. And we have people who are in the eight figures,
yeah,
in the program, but they didn't start there.
yeah.
And it's not the case. The fastest way to become a millionaire is start off as a billionaire. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. But the big thing about it is that so the first one we introduced a concept in the very first year of the program of taking your thinking 10 times. In other words, and you can measure that in a number of ways, but profitability is a good one.
Yeah.
And and it really relates to your freedoms. 10 times more freedom of time, 10 times more freedom of money, 10 times more freedom of relationship. And you can put specifics to that, and you can put measurements to that. But the first thing we do is we take people back to when they were 1/10 of where they are right now.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
they all
Yeah.
have been.
Yeah.
They, I mean, the first day you were an entrepreneur, you were
Yeah.
1,000th of what
Yeah.
you were.
Zero.
Yeah. Zero is a good thing to improve from.
Yeah, exactly.
One is a great
Yeah.
breakthrough. And anyway, so we take them through, and then we have them break their career up, up until the
Mhm.
present moment into 5 growth stages. And we get them to say, now, what changed in each of these stages? And they identify 3 in each stage.
Mhm.
And after a while, they say, well, I already know how to go 10 times. And I says, good. Now let's push it into the future.
Yeah.
Okay. And let's just say you're going to have 5 growth stages to go to 10 times. So how would you break out the 5 growth stages ahead?
Right.
And, but the biggest change that takes your company 10 times is transforming you.
Yeah. Good point. Hmm.
because your company takes their cues entirely for you.
Yeah.
If you're looking more and more freed up, they want to free you up.
Yeah.
You're looking happier and more confident. They want more of that because that guarantees them job security.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing too is in what you mentioned, a lot of times, when you're doing, okay, we're doing projections and okay, we want to increase 10%, 20%. That's very linear thinking. And for us, when we set our goal and we're also using the entrepreneurial operating system and I know you're utilizing
Yeah,
that as
this is
well.
another whole organization,
Yeah.
EOS, and we just have a fit perfect kind of collaboration with them,
Yep.
and we recommend that all of our clients see what we're the coaching program for the entrepreneur,
Yep.
but we're not the coaching organization for the entrepreneur's team.
Yeah.
So there's another whole organization. It was actually created by one of our clients who's been in
Mhm.
coach for 27 years. And he kept asking me, are you ever going to go in this direction? I said, no, we're just focused
Yeah.
on the main person and the support team for the main person. We have,
Yeah.
what's the team, 3 or 4 people that are right around the entrepreneur. But I mean, we've got organizations that have 10,000 people in them.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, so we're
Well,
just going after who's the leader here, who's the person who has the
yep.
vision, who's the person that is the main salesperson, and we just want to keep that person growing, but growing in terms of greater freedom.
Right.
Okay. And then, but EOS, entrepreneurial operating system, is a marvelous system
Yeah.
of how then you surround yourself with leaders who totally free you up.
Yeah.
All the different operational. I mean, how many would you have, Carter, when you think about, where if you had a new person to free you up, let's say there were 5 areas, where would you want that to be?
Well, for me, it's always an innovating financing, and we're going to talk about that. We just came up with a new tool in Texas that has completely changed everything. We've got another one that we're going to roll out where we'll be able to roll it out all over the United States.
Texas is a good place to.
Yeah, Texas is a great place to be working.
Texas is the lead state. I have to tell you,
Yeah.
the future of
And
the future of the United States is being determined by Texas.
and they are entrepreneurial. Let me tell you. I mean, I love Texas. But getting back to that 10x thinking and so where would I like to be freed up? It's in my thinking. It's like how we started this, thinking about your thinking, because the thinking that got me here today is not going to get me 10x. I have to get rid of a lot of what I brought with me. And I'll take a couple of the things with me to that next jump, but I can't think the way I'm currently thinking. And so how do I want to think? I want to think about DOS for those that we want to be a hero to, development and the home building industry. And then how do I apply that thinking, that innovation to solving their DOS?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, and I would have never, I mean, the strategic coach has just crystallized my thinking.
Yeah.
And with thinking about the thinking and the 250 thinking tools that you've created. So part of me doesn't even want to have you on the podcast, Dan, because I don't want anybody to learn about this. But because I want to be a hero to them, I have to roll you out.
Yeah, but if you're in your unique ability, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
And the reason is nobody can compete with your unique ability.
That's true.
As a matter of fact, the only thing you can do with someone else's unique ability is collaborate with them.
Yeah.
You don't compete with other people's unique ability. First of all, you can't because and so, I mean, and you're in the top level of the program, and all we're doing there is having unique abilities collaborating with unique ability. There's no competition, you're always creating a new thing. Neither of you could create the new thing, and actually 3 is the magical number. If you put 3 unique abilities together, you can create brand new things in the marketplace that no one else can possibly create.
And for our audience, Dan has created a unique tool called the triple play, where we're combining things all the
Yeah.
time. And
Yeah.
who would have thunk, right? That these three things that have no relationship to one another actually do, and
Yeah.
they create a new thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and they're in the
it's amazing.
future. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're in the future. And I will tell you, I've been thinking about this for 50 years, and I'm convinced that the only people who can create brand new things that are truly transformative are cash confident entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
You
And do you
know,
want to define what cash confident is? I know it can have different meanings, but for our listeners.
yeah. Well, the big thing is just to give you an just to give you an example. Um, it's one of our clients runs an advertising agency,
Mm-hmm.
and it's Mark Young. Mark, you know Mark,
Mm-hmm.
and Mark through an outside activity, it was actually racing. He
Oh,
met a man who was the head of a whole division of a corporation that has 4,000 stores. Okay, and they had real problems. They had real problems in it.
mm-hmm.
And stores are based on profitability per square
Yep.
foot. Okay, and he within a very short time, using the corporate vice president, and they put together an entire new framework of how you could constantly increase the profitability of a store. Okay, and then they started bringing in other partners, like he brought in a medical, because pharmacies are the most valuable part of
Mm-hmm.
any. I mean, if you have in this case, it's a pharmaceutical store, but it's actually the pharmacy in the store, because pharmacies have a lot of other products they
Yeah.
sell. So he says, let's start with the pharmacy. And he started bringing in um, uh, other unique ability, medical unique ability. And these are regenerative medicine
Mm-hmm.
people. This is the cutting edge
Wow.
people. So now you have three people. You have an advertising agency. You have the VP, the corporate person in there. And there are corporate people who are very entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
It's not their career is their business.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So he brought in three, and the three of them together are just transforming the store from coast to coast.
Amazing.
Okay.
Yeah. I
And
love
all they're doing is doing what they love doing, but putting it together in ways that nobody else could think about.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Okay.
and the best example of
Um,
that is our
yeah.
good friend Steve Jobs. I shouldn't say he's not my friend, but I mean the one we refer to all the time with the iPhone and
Well,
or
iTunes.
iTunes. Yeah, iTunes. You're right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, at a certain point, Apple Computer became Apple. And the
Yeah.
reason was that Steve Jobs got fired from Apple Computer. And
Uh-huh.
he was out there for 5 years, I think, until they had to have him back. And what he discovered, music. And okay, so he started really liking music,
Yeah.
but he discovered that he would like a song, but when he went to the record store, the music store, he had to buy 11 other songs to get the song that he wanted. And he said, why can't I just get the song I wanted?
Yeah.
And so what he noticed was there was a thing called the internet, which had been and there was a company called Netscape who illegally
Mhm.
downloaded music. Stealing is not a good business model long range.
No, it's
And
not. Yeah.
and then there was the MP3 player, and Sony was the great pioneer of that with the Walkman, but Apple had created the iPod,
Yeah.
and but you were just taking things off your computer and putting them
Yeah.
into. So he said, why don't we just create a whole new service? And he actually had an app called iTunes, but it wasn't related to the internet at all. So he
Uh-huh.
said, why don't we just put this whole thing together? We'll take um, the it was Napster. It wasn't
Yeah.
Netscape. It was Napster. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like gangsters. Napster. Napster here napping something. And anyway, and the MP3 player, which is
Yeah.
what the iPod is, and then the Apple operating system, which has always
Mhm.
been their unique feature, what they just
Yeah.
have always had. Put them all together. And then, you know, he came on, he talked about this, and the whole world stopped when Steve Jobs said, I've been thinking about something.
Yeah.
And he said, and this is available tomorrow, and it'll cost you $1 per record. And since it's already created music, we're going to give the artist 60% of the dollar.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, every artist in the world wanted to be on iTunes, and Apple Computer in 2 years went to Apple, which was the biggest distributor of music, and that happened in a 2-year period.
Yeah. I mean, I just love that
And
story.
nobody in the record industry could have possibly created that.
Yeah, or even saw it coming, you know, for
Or
they're trying
anybody
to
else in the
protect everything.
computer,
Yeah.
anybody else in the computer industry for
Yeah.
that. So more and more I'm seeing in the future that you're going to have entrepreneurs who are cash confident. Now, this is the question you asked me. Cash confidence is that you're completely freed up time-wise, you're completely freed up relationship-wise to actually get together with two other unique abilities and create a new third thing.
Yeah.
And you know, your industry is just the ideal place to do this because you never develop land alone. You always have to. But who are the other two that are cash confident? Cash confidence is you have the freedom just to experiment with a new thing, and none of you needs the money short time. You're fine money.
We're already generating that, so we're not worried about the 1st or the 15th, and we have time to think about our thinking, innovate, and come up with this new thing.
And we the first room, you were in the first room when we actually did this, and we just took two other people in the room. We had 48, and the possibilities are like 10,000. You know, if you have 48 people, what are the possibilities of groups of three? It's just, and I said, how much creativity and money you think you could generate just with the people who are in the room? You could create a whole new economy just with the people who are in the room.
And Dan, you know, I don't want to give too much out to the audience, but we are currently working on one of these new combinations, which in my opinion has the ability not only to transform the United States, but the world. Yeah.
Well, certainly the United States.
And it's very important that the United States grab this opportunity, you know, as opposed to others. But with that, and not talking too much about that, you and I are big fans of Peter Zion. Okay. And for those of you not familiar with Peter Zion, he's a geopolitical consultant, author, has a number of books. The Accidental Superpower, the end of the world is just beginning, which
is his latest book.
Is just fascinating. I know you've read it cover to cover multiple times.
We met him. We spent a whole day with Peter just prior to COVID. Actually, it was I think it was February of 20. And he is the most original thinker on geopolitics. And I'm a big you know, I was born in the last year of the Second World War, so the 1944, and I've been very, very interested in how the world works, and I have to tell you his take on how the world is going, and he says it's getting worse. It's getting worse, except for the United States. Now in this area, it's getting worse, except for the United States in this world, and if you investigate, I can't recommend Peter more highly. And I'll just give you the plug. It's Peter Zion, and it's Zeihan, and I think he's out of Denver. And if you just look him up, he has about 3 to 4 podcasts a week, little 8 minutes blogs and podcasts, and he is so dead on. It's very interesting just to sort of tease people. In 2014, he wrote a book, and he said, you know, Russia is in terrible trouble. And he said they're 20 years away from not being able to field an army because they stopped having babies 40 years ago. And he said, so I figure they're going to have to do something to secure their borders. And I believe in early 22, they're going to invade Ukraine.
Yeah.
That was in 2014.
Yeah.
8 years later, early in February 2022. And that just shows you how acute his understanding is of the world. But in every one of his analysis, the United States comes up
Right.
as great. Everything's going to be great in the United States.
And I'll plug them as well, Dan, because all of my audience and those that we want to be a hero to, they're all what's going to happen next, doing market studies, doing customer research, all this kind of stuff, right? But we have all these global trends, and you're starting to see it. Peter lays them all out. And in fact, one of your quarterly books that you're putting out was called Melt. Which is somewhat of a synopsis of how the world is changing. We're seeing the onshoring. We're seeing, the wars in the Middle East, Ukraine, supply chains reorganizing themselves. But the world is changing. Could you just expand a little bit on that, because I think it would be of interest to our listeners.
Well, basically, when the war ended in 1945, the United States was half the world economy. The U.S. economy was half the world economy. And part of the reason is that the European countries just got flattened. They were bankrupt.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you had Japan, and which was flattened, and it was bankrupt. And the United States saw the next enemy. So, I mean, the U.S. always sees a new enemy coming up.
Yeah.
And they looked at this one, and there was no way you could fight a war against the Soviets in Europe, because they don't care how many people die.
Yeah.
And Americans are very, very annoyed about coffins coming back. First of all, they don't like losing taxpayers, and they certainly don't like their taxpayers coming back in coffins. So they just, and the other thing is, the United States is not a land military country. It's a naval. It's the greatest navy that's ever existed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's you could take one American carrier group, and it's equal to all but 4 of the other navies in the world. That's just one aircraft.
And that's just one. Yeah.
And they have 11. And anyway, so they did a deal with the world, which said, okay, first rule is the U.S. dollar is the reserve currency. And that's when it happened. It actually happened in 44. The agreement was, I was 6 weeks old when it happened. And in 19...
A lot of important things happened in 44, Dan.
Yeah.
You being one of them.
Good year to be born.
Yeah.
Anyway, first of all, you're not a baby boomer, and that keeps your life very simple. And anyway, the second one was they would lend massively for everybody to regrow their economies. Okay, which they did. And they said, you can make anything you want, and you can ship it anywhere you want, and the U.S. Navy will guarantee safe passage anywhere in the world. And the other thing is, if you want to import into the United States, there will be no tariffs. Well, sweet deal. But they didn't do it for economic reasons. They did it for security reasons. They just didn't want to go to war again. And there have been other wars like Korea and Vietnam, and then the Middle East war. Well, those two happened, and it was all because of the Soviet Union. And then in 1991, basically, 1992, the Soviet Union collapsed and the enemy went away. But it was such a sweet deal for everybody that they said, we didn't notice anything.
Yeah.
So, nothing changed. It was just the greatest deal in the history of the world, and then U.S. taxpayers and U.S. workers were paying for it. Because the U.S. isn't involved with the rest of the world. Basically, only 10% of the GDP actually goes to export-import. 90% is just Americans creating stuff that Americans buy. So you go along 5 presidencies. So Clinton was the first, then you had Bush, then you had Obama, then you had Trump, and now you have the current occupant. And we hope that changes soon. And anyway, and each of them has pulled away from the deal. And one of the results is they're pulling all manufacturing back into the United States.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is where what you're doing becomes
Mhm.
crucial. You and
Yeah.
the 5,000
Mhm.
entrepreneurs that this podcast is going out. The fact is the U.S. is going to be as mighty, 10 times more powerful industrial and manufacturing country.
Yep.
It's the biggest energy producer. It's the biggest agricultural producer. We got food, we've got energy, we got massive amounts of land.
Yep.
And
And we've got the to our south, Mexico, to the north, Canada, good
yeah,
friends. The
yeah,
navigable waterways.
it's a single economic system.
Yeah.
It's got, it's US is 330 million legal and maybe another 20 million illegal.
Yeah.
And then you have Canada, and then you have Mexico. And Mexico is the perfectly placed country in the world
Yeah.
because their pay scale at all levels is 1/6 of the United States,
Yeah.
which means you can anything that's low value manufacturing, you move it to Mexico from China, from
Yeah.
from high level, you bring it all back to the United States. High level being,
Yeah.
high technology
Right.
energy. Energy is high value
Yeah.
manufacturing.
And so in the MELT concept, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, but MELT stands for money, energy, labor, and technology, or
Transportation.
transportation,
Yeah,
right?
transportation. A
Yeah.
lot of people don't realize transportation is the key economic factor. How long does it take how costly is it to get something from here to here?
Yeah.
And in all four of them, the US has the lowest costs on the planet.
Right. With rivers, rails,
Oh,
ports, interstate,
air,
airports. Yeah.
air.
Air.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, the United States is, yeah. See, my think world affairs is all the other countries are trying to get the United States entangled in their affairs because they're afraid that the US is going to go into warp drive
Yeah.
and just leave them all behind.
Right. Right.
Yeah, yeah. And it's hard to invade the United States. You got 3,000 miles of water on one side, 5,000 miles on the other.
Yep.
You got mostly desert and mountains on the south where it connects with Mexico.
Yeah.
And on the north, you have pot smoking Canadians. They're not going to try.
Yeah, they're not going to be coming south anytime soon. Yeah, it's like what do you call it? The biggest, yeah,
Yeah,
gated
Canada is
community.
America's biggest gated
Yeah,
community.
yeah,
You have to check in at the gate. You can't bring your
yeah,
guns in,
yeah. But
Yeah.
it's hey Dan, I appreciate your time. We've gotten
We
into a
should do
lot of
this
different
again.
con.
We should do this again. There's a lot to talk
I,
about.
I I would love to,
Yeah.
and as we conclude here today and talking about the world that is changing, thinking about our thinking, unique ability. Is there anything you'd like to leave our audience with to think about until the next podcast?
I've spent 50 years doing this, and I'm planning to, and I have 100-year goals. So it'll be 20
Mhm.
years. I'm 100, and I'm in great shape.
Yep, you
I, you know,
look great.
yeah, I'm really in great shape. So my goal is that just within the framework of Strategic Coach, we're pushing 3,000 entrepreneurial owners who are in the program. We're in 3 countries. We're US, Canada, and the UK. And by 2044, we'll have 10,000. And what we're pushing all of our clients for is to create intellectual property,
Mhm.
and that's easy to do with copyrights and trademarks. But the big
Mhm.
one is patents, and patents are one of the greatest assets in the world right
Yep.
now. And so our goal is that we have 10,000 entrepreneurs whose patent assets are worth $15 trillion.
Yep.
Okay, and you can get them appraised today. You can lend against
Yep.
your patents. And for example, we already have one client who's just starting a new business in regenerative medicine, and he's already got 400 patents before the product has even hit the thing. And those
Unreal. Yeah.
Those patents are worth $1.5 billion or somewhere in that
Yeah.
neighborhood. So the big thing is, I've got a very simple life. All I have to do is free up entrepreneurs.
Yeah. I love that.
I was put on the planet to free up entrepreneurs, and that's my job.
And Dan, to that end, and you've really freed up my life in a lot of different ways to think, to do what I like to do and to increase those 4 freedoms. So I just want to say thank you, Dan, for participating in this. I hope the audience benefits from this. And if you want to learn more about Dan and the Strategic Coach, go to strategiccoach.com. I'll put all of the contact information in our show notes.
Yeah.
And Dan, thank you again for taking the time out of your day to speak with us and our audience. It really means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Carter.
You have been listening to the Land to Lots podcast with Carter Froelich. Follow us wherever you find your podcast to never miss a new episode.